We're all familiar with music containing a pulse, a beat, a sense of rhythm, but visual artwork can contain rhythm too. And we describe it the same way. We describe it as being a beat, a pulse, or sense of movement. To create a sense of rhythm in visual arts, artists strategically repeat similar or exactly the same visual elements. So have a look at this painting. We have this really strong sense of vertical up-down movement created by the repetition of the jockeys, and in particular their heads, which are all the same. They're all facing the same way, the heads have the same shape. But of course, the horses' heads are repeated too, as are the numbers. In order for the viewer's eye to make a connection between one repeated visual element and another, those repeated elements have to be the same or similar. So in this case, the women's heads are not identical because they are all facing slightly different directions, but they're similar enough that our eyes or our brain make the connection from one to the next. And so you can see with the magenta arrow that that's the path that the viewer's eye is going to naturally follow, thereby creating creating a beat, a pulse, or a sense of rhythm. We call these repeated elements accent points. So in this case, the accent points are the ladies' heads. And here we have another piece by the same artist. Now in this example, notice how the accent points are all arranged in a linear fashion. So our eye can trace the path from the left side of the composition all the way across to the right side. Now, linear means straight, but in visual art, we don't necessarily want a hard straight line of accent points. So if you follow the heads in this painting, you'll see that the line, it's straight, but it has a bit of a meander, a bit of a curve. The accent points need to be the same size. This one is getting close to the point where those heads are not quite the same size, because if you take a look at the figure that's farthest from us wearing the white top, we see that that person's head is considerably smaller than the other ones, but it's still close enough that our brain connects one head to the next, and we can consider those heads as being accent points. Now, how many accent points do you need in a piece of art? Well, 3 is the minimal. Without 3, a pulse is just not created. So in this painting, we have 3 accent points, the 3 heads, boom, boom, boom. And so we do have a linear sense of movement, and we have rhythm in this painting. I'm purposely showing you artwork that contains people because we want to continue with our go figure it out theme for your current unit of study. So your first assignment involved doing some gesture figure drawings, and that was to get you warmed up and have you practice figure drawing. Now your assignment is to create a piece of art using people, using figures like the ones I've shown you here, and your goal is to create rhythm in your artwork. So your goal is to strategically arrange those people in some sort of linear fashion where you have repetition of accent points. And in doing so, you will create a sense of movement, a pulse, a beat, a sense of rhythm in your artwork. Now, like this jockey example, you can have other visual elements in your artwork, but the people should really dominate. Let's look at some student examples. So this student used high divers, and she really emphasized the accent points by putting the yellow swim caps on the divers' heads. And so our eye starts maybe with the diver at the very top, and then the linear sense of movement meanders down the composition, and we have a nice sense of rhythm from the repetition of those heads. That's an acrylic painting. Here's a soft pastel piece. Now, this sense of rhythm is horizontal. The last one was vertical, top down. This one's horizontal, left, right. And again, it's quite linear, but there's a little bit of a meander, a little bit of a curvature as we move from one head to the next. The beetles. Linear arrangement of accent points with a little bit of curvature, a little bit of variation. Also in acrylic painting. Here we have 4 accent points, divers. I thought this was really clever, the way this student made the diver on the number 5 block actually do a false start, just to break the monotony of having all the divers ready at the block. Really neat. Okay, so again, the swim caps kind of emphasize the fact that those heads are all the same. This one's very similar to that horse and jockey example, because in this case, the jockeys are all facing the same way, thereby having the same shape of head, and they're all wearing the same helmet. So like these divers are all wearing the swim cap and goggles. And chimney sweeps. Okay, that's it for the rhythm examples. So that should be pretty clear. You just have to repeat some people, but you have to strategically arrange them so that their heads are creating that linear formation, that pulse. Now, remember that as you're planning your rough thumbnail sketches, which might look like, here's an example of like a planning composition. And here we have, I want to show you this. Look, here's extremely rough compositional idea, extremely rough. This one's a little bit more refined. Well, what's the similarity between these two? Notice how the artist is, even in the beginning stages of the compositional planning, already thinking about where this dominant dark values are going to go. And in the refined sketch, and in the really refined sketch, we see the artist always thinking about dark values. So always remember that value is the make or break element of art in terms of your two-dimensional artwork. It's so very important, even more important than color. So always be thinking about where those dominant dark values are going to go, and think about strategically arranging them throughout the composition to create a sense of equilibrium. If we compare the compositional sketch at the top with the finished product at the bottom, we see that the values match up. And so guide and roadmap are some terms that we can use to describe a value plan. Here's another example of a value plan. So there's my compositional sketch, working inside a box, thinking about positive, negative shape. Then I establish the main dark values on the horses. Then I move towards the negative shape, and I'm thinking about how I'm going to break up the negative shape with a variety of value shapes, dark values, light values. And then while I was working on my actual good copy, I had my value plan beside me. So as a roadmap or as a guide, so that I knew how to make my colors lighter or darker. So what I'm attempting to suggest here is that even when you're working really rough, like these ones here, these sketches here, you're thinking about your values. Okay, what else I want to tell you? Positive, negative shape. Don't forget that just like this student here, you need to start planning your composition in boxes. Don't use the edge of your sketchbook as the confines of your composition. Draw boxes in your sketchbook and try out different designs for your composition. This is actually the same drawing repeated 3 times, but I'm showing that I'm zooming in more and more and more in each case. So the more I zoom in, the more the negative shape changes. Look at the composition on the far left. It has a different sense of negative shape. That's the space around the horses, as say the composition on the far right. Because with the composition on the far right, I've zoomed in, I've cropped even more. So how the positive shapes interact with the edges of your composition will determine the negative shape. So spend some time planning that out. Have a look at that finished product. All the women in the candles make up the positive shape, and they're all strategically grouped or touching. It's hard to see the negative shape in this version of the outline sketch, but if we look at it like that, where the positive shape is left unshaded and the negative shape is shaded in, you can really see the relationship between the positive and negative shape. You can see it in this one too. Hey, there's a sense of rhythm, right? With the fish, the repetition of the fish heads or the fish eyes. But with your assignment, I want you to use figures, people, and put them in expressive poses too, by the way. That's one thing that these students did quite well. If we go back to this example, in most of these cases, the people are in fairly expressive poses, so their bodies make some interesting shapes. Okay, so plan your compositions in boxes so that you're thinking about positive, negative shape. Here's another good example of what I mean about the relationship between positive shape and the edge of the format. So this is way too much negative shape in this composition. This is a much better composition where the positive shape actually extends right off the format and thereby breaking up the negative shape into small chunks. Okay, so use the knowledge and the practice that you gained in doing the gesture figure drawings to do this rhythm project and be creative, had fun with it. Make sure, look for reference photos online, or maybe take your own reference photos. Use your camera, take your own reference photos of people in different poses. It's nice to pick a theme, as you see that these students did, and then that's going to help you collect your reference photos. These examples here are not by students. They're by a professional artist named Michael Carson. I really love his work. He often works with the theme of like these thin women in these fancy dresses, and sometimes he works with males, but a lot of his work involves these women, and they're usually in poses that it's not like they're super expressive. It's not like the women are moving much, but they are in different poses, like they're like, look at in this one here how one woman's got her left leg up, one woman's kind of down, kind of squatting down, one's kind of bending over. So yeah, there's that nice variation. And in this one, some of the women are sitting, some of them are standing, some of them are facing us, some of them aren't. So look for ways to create variety in your artwork as well. Email me if you have questions or concerns, and have fun with this assignment.